Welcome back to the Radio of Horror YouTube channel. Tonight we are talking about a Netflix mini-series, which could, I think, might come into another series. They're covering one particular serial killer, and Katie, the blonde in front of here, is on with us to talk about this 4-episode Netflix show.
Yes, Creeps and Fiends. It's I, Katie, the blonde in front of here, talk to you about Night Stalker, the hunt for a serial killer, sorry. Directors James Carroll and Tiller Russell. This goes into the hunt for, and actually he was, from what they said, from the first instance of his crimes to the last, it went from like May 1984 to, I believe, August of 1985, or June 84 to August of 85. He had 4 people who were killed that at least that they think, possibly more. When you watch the documentary or series, which I highly recommend you should, you can see that he did some stuff in San Francisco. Then he kind of went on, there was like, for some reason, some sort of a hiatus. I don't know if he was in jail or anything like that. And then he just went on a rampage in LA where it just traumatized the city. There's many things about this series that you're not going to see in a lot of things about serial killers. One, while the crimes are documented and are definitely go into detail of what he did, this series actually focuses more on the police work, the detective work, the victims and who they were, who their families are, who they were before they became a victim of this person, and how this has affected their lives, how this has affected the detectives' lives, and how they've learned to move on. Not necessarily, I mean, you're never going to get over someone's death and stuff like that, but how they've through these years, how they've been able to go on with their lives and not focus on the actual Night Stalker. And that's something that you do not see, especially with things that are on Netflix. I mean, God knows I love a good true crime doc, and I have been a little bit, I wouldn't say obsessed, but I do have a thing like trying to figure out how these people, how you get into their heads, like why they became who they were, all that stuff. Something about this series, though, has kind of turned me off on that, because this one really shows you that these were people that he killed. And it's I don't know, kind of the grossness of the groupies that have idolized, people like him, people like Richard Ramirez. I'll say his name once. And even in the courtroom when he was having his trial, like one of the scenes that really hit me was a granddaughter of one of the victims. She had to excuse herself because she just didn't want to be in his presence anymore. And she was outside on a bench just trying to breathe and, just trying to gain her composure. And there was some like 19, 20-year-old kid sitting next to her. And she was trying to think like, oh, who is he related to? Is he a friend of someone that died or was hurt? Is he, a family member? And then she realized that the guy sitting next to her was a fan of the man who brutally murdered her grandmother. And that's something that, I don't know, that really got me, because it's with this case, I mean, they tracked down, I mean, this is before Google. This is before you had cameras on every single street corner. This is before, a lot of the times the policemen, the police agencies didn't connect each other because they wanted to be like, oh, I'm going to be the one that solves the case and all that stuff. And newsflash, I hope that works in your field, because I would say not really any of the general public know your names that did that. I'll know these names of these guys now because it was in this. I love the fact that they work together with San Francisco. They're one of the lead detectives actually was trying to convince him that different crimes, like not only the murders of the adults, but then there were crimes that, and this was a brand new information to me, like that he would actually kidnap kids, sexually assault them, like for a good 12 hours, and then let them go. In my mind, I think the reason why he did that is because he wanted to have a little, I think he probably thought that if he did this to them, that they would turn out like him. And one of his victims definitely proved that wrong. She was 6, and she talked about, not in, the gross detail. We don't need to hear about that, but she definitely let us know that he hurt her, and it continued to hurt her. And he would, and then he shoved her in a bag and let her go and say, go call the phone over at the gas station. And apparently he did that with a number of children, which I had no idea about. And what makes me kind of grossed out is that when he was finally caught, and was on trial, that there were chicks who sent in nude photos to him. And there was one lady that was not a victim. She was in contact with them in a way where she was at some shop, and the ACDC hat that he's been accustomed with, she was going to get it, and she put it down, and she smelled this guy next to her, and it was him. So, I mean, that's how she knew him. But I think the quote that she had is one of the ones that it's the only one I'll use from the series. You should see it yourself. But when they talked about these women who you would send love letters to them and nude photos, she says, "I'm sorry, I think they are the dumbest bitches ever." I could not agree more. And if anyone recognizes these women from these pictures, please shame them on every social media thing that you can possibly do, because watching this and knowing that he just the things that he did to children, and you're freaking sending in nude pictures to him, that is gross. That is gross. I know there was no eHarmony and skanks.com that you probably would have signed up for in the 80s, but shame on you. I'm ringing the bell from Game of Thrones. Shame on you that you would do that, because that is just nasty. I don't care what kind of fame he had. Get a fucking grip. Jesus, it's gross. But I'm very happy that the people of Los Angeles, that when they saw his photo on the newspaper and saw him get off that damn bus and tracked him down and hit him with a pipe and got the cops to stop him. Actually, he actually had to get the cops. He actually gave himself into the mass when it hit them. Thank you to the policemen. Policemen, sorry. Thank you to the police officers of LA. Thank you to police officers of San Francisco. Thank you to the 6-year-old who was in a lineup and picked him out. And thank you to the people of Los Angeles that knew that to get their way of life back and get this nightmare to end, they would track him down and beat him. Thank you for doing what you did, because you are the people that you're the reason why it stopped him. I mean, I know a lot of people don't understand why in the documentary that it showed a lot of Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a huge city, and he could have been anywhere. I mean, he went from on this spree where he killed one woman and then went to another house down the block, killed another woman. I mean, it's California. No one really has air conditioning. So their doors are open, their windows are unlocked, their screens are unlocked. This was a nightmare for these people. And it's because of these citizens and these people who just didn't give up and were going to find him. You guys are the reasons why he was caught. He is a monster. He definitely is someone who was made that way. As I told Chris before we started, if he had actually maybe done this to his family, who actually made him this way, I could probably be on the board that says, I could see leniency. There's people who've had bad things happen to them. There's people who have bad things happen to them all the time, but they don't turn into serial killers. I mean, he did bad things to people in this. They had a school. They went to school. They graduated. They have a family. They have a life. They didn't turn into a monster, and neither did he. But I would definitely watch this series to take a different look at when you're dealing with a serial killer, what all these people had to deal with.
I really thought they did a good job breaking down the investigative journalism in the police with the two cops that were working this case and who were, really ridiculed by their partners of being not their partners, by their coworkers about, like the young cop was just trying to make his name for himself, but he was really onto something. He was working with the older cop. I thought that dynamic was very good because he's the young cop out of the academy, and the older cop has taken him under his wing, and they're a white cop and a Hispanic cop. So they definitely have he works with him because of the fact that he's Hispanic and he can speak Spanish, so they can work the streets of California where there's a heavy Spanish population. And I hear that a lot with police officers that I've interviewed and other cops, that they want to be partnered with somebody that is of a mixed race to help, work the angle of the people who are not necessarily white or Caucasian to make them more trustworthy of the police because of the distrust of the police, and we're not going to get into all that, but especially in LA. And then how they break down everything about the case reminded me really of like an old episode of Unsolved Mysteries. The new Unsolved Mysteries is okay, but it is not as great as that old one with Robert Wagner. And I absolutely I'm sorry, Robert Stack, excuse me. Yeah, sorry, Robert Stack. And long story short, I really thought this was a really well put together documentary on Netflix, worth checking out. When I heard Nightcrawler, I immediately thought of like the Jake Gyllenhaal movie, which I absolutely love. Of course, thought of Kurt Wagner, the X-Man, but I definitely was glad it had that, crime noir feel, streets kind of look to it, like the Nightcrawler movie did. Couple things in the TV series I would cut out is just the long shots of the street and like a glass or, nothing that had anything to do with the case. Could have heavily cut this down to possibly like 3 episodes. There are times during the show I thought the pacing was definitely off because I'd rather hear the officers talking and the interviews with them or the crime scene photos. I didn't know who this serial killer was until I watched this documentary, but then found out afterwards about a lot of the information. I have a friend on Facebook who has a signed letter from this killer. I believe he's been executed, correct?
No, he died of cancer.
Oh, okay. So, well, then that's his good comeuppance because electric chair is too quick. Cancer is a long-suffering battle that I don't wish on anybody except for somebody like this. So I was, and he posted this letter online, and I was like, "Wow, how did you get that? Was that addressed to you?" And he goes, "Oh no, this was an auction that there was a collection of letters in there from several inmates." And they were auctioning them off, and this happened to be in there at the time. And I was like, wow, how much is that worth? And he's just like, could probably pay off my mortgage with this letter to the right collector. And I was like, seriously? He's like, yeah, serial killer collectible stuff is big business. There's no law against it, and I was shocked. And we talk about these letters and these nude photos that the serial killer got, and people do that all the time. I mean, it is rather disturbing and disgusting. Did you ever see Cool World?
Yes.
In that movie, Gabriel Byrne's character is not a serial killer, but he did murder somebody in self-defense and went to prison for it. And or I don't really remember the whole story, but anyway, he gets sent like tons of letters and nude photos from women who were like, because he was a comic book creator and he's still allowed to work on his comic book in prison. He gets sent like all these, lovely pictures by women. In that regard, that's a little different than being a serial killer who just went out of your way to take someone's life because of the sheer joy of it. He went to prison because of self-defense or something, premeditative manslaughter or whatever. Hearing that from Cati just was really disturbing because those people are definitely not in the right head. If you definitely want to see an inside look into a great crime scene story that you are not familiar with, definitely check out Night on Netflix and check out the rest of the reviews here on the Radio Horror YouTube channel.